Thanks for watching this portion of Garage Logic on our YouTube channel, and thanks to our friends at Everest Men's Health for supporting this. Go to everestmenshealth.com to see if their team can help you with stronger energy and better health. And catch the Garage Logic podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Joe Souchere, here's Don Samuels.
Hi, Don.
Hi, Joe.
Hey, thank you and your wife and Bruce Dacus. Am I pronouncing his name correctly? Bruce Dacus? Dacus for doing the Lord's work. It's not what you want, but you got closer, didn't you, to that ballot question?
Yeah, we got closer. Yeah. So we're grateful for that.
What do you think, Don, is behind Yes for Minneapolis, which essentially is funded outside the state? Do you think there's something more nefarious going on here than meets the eye?
Well, I think that I'm not sure. I'm not sure. It seems to be a hodgepodge collection of people, just based on the multi explanations of what they want and what things mean, and that carries over into the city council also. It does not seem to be a tightly coordinated philosophy, at least, philosophically. But there seems to be a core there somewhere of a value or mission that is that has a nucleus somewhere that's not fully defined, that has an idealistic view of the future.
I think so.
You could almost call it utopian view of the future that has a certain disregard for reality and is determined to recreate society in a way. And at least as far as police and community is concerned. And the seeds of that could be seen prior to the previous election of this council, where I think 4 of them signed a document in order to be endorsed by this group, that where they said that they could see a day when Minneapolis would not have police. If you didn't sign it, you couldn't get their endorsement.
What was the reaction of you and your wife when you realized that there was actually a movement to defund the police department?
Well, there is the word horrified comes to mind, but that's not exactly correct, because horrified suggests sort of a emotional reaction. We did have that, but it was a very, very pragmatic, experience-driven reaction. We understood that having lived in the community for 25 years, that the collection of resources and efforts, the network of collection of resources and efforts that contribute to the stability of our community was complex, and they all had to be working simultaneously and in a coordinated fashion. So, for instance, you had the slumlords and the slum properties with unsupervised tenants, many of whom were young women with boyfriends, or that they acquired mostly during their residency in this property, and the boyfriend would be on the other side of the law, and pretty soon he took over her life and her place and even her drug habit, and made her into a drug addict, and he owns the place and it becomes a drug house. That things like that. And so then, as you become a seasoned neighbor in these communities, you start to see these patterns, and so you start to react quickly. You know the landlord who is not responsible. You know the houses he owns. You see a little activity there. You begin to do what you can to interact with the young woman when she moves in. And so, for instance, in our street, we would bring a wagon. What do you call that? Welcome wagon.
Yep.
And it had in there a page with our community standards, which we developed with all our neighbors. And we tell this person, you know, you have children, we have children, we want them to be safe. And so we came up with these rules. And so, you know, we look out for each other. We're going to look out for your child. And if we see any drug dealing or any crime, we call each other. And we don't tolerate it because we want our kids to be safe. So you're sending a message and you're welcoming the person, right? The little things like that. That seems like so random, but it was well thought out as this is how we have to do it, so that when we see an activity, we can intervene with the landlord, with the tenant, and say, hey, you know, remember we talked, you know, that kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
These are strategies we developed. Picketing, calling landlords, working together, having phone trees, talking to each other, having a relationship with a precinct commander, patrols, and having a relationship, hopefully, with the mayor, and it was out of that kind of connectivity that I was asked by my neighbors to run for office and went to the council. So I understand the community connectivity necessary to keep the peace, and the connectivity to each other and to downtown, to City Hall and the police. So when when I saw the city council standing on the podium and announcing that they're going to defund the police, this entire huge chunk of the system of interconnectivity that we relied on,
right?
This sense that, you know, there was law and there was order, and we were the culture part of it. We were connected to that, and pretty much the guys on the street understood their boundaries. You know, I can't do this here, I can't do that there, because somebody's going to call a landlord or, you know, call the police. Or
well, the boundaries have disappeared. The boundaries have disappeared, haven't they?
Boundaries are gone.
Yeah.
You know, at least, I mean, we depended on the police to confront the guy next door. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
Because we knew that we could call 911.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was this sense that the police are not perfect. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
And they did. There were some guys in there that did a lot of bad things. But we in order for us to function as interrupters, we depended on the knowledge that the police were a reliable place where the buck stopped.
Why are the boundaries gone?
Knew that.
Don, why are the boundaries gone?
That's gone.
Why are the boundaries gone? What happened?
Well, they went for several reasons. Because of the preponderance of crime erupting out of the George Floyd situation and the COVID situation. Right after the riots, the police got depleted. There were a lot of cops out on sick leave, but also the criminal community emerged sort of together in a wave. Mm-hmm. It was as if you can imagine each guy on the other side of the law, or woman, doing an occasional crime and going back undercover, or doing an occasional crime, but normally is a decent person or whatever. But it's as if now a big wave lifted up a lot of those people together in a consensus of criminality, simultaneous criminality. And so it tested the police in a way that it had never been before. So, for instance, at Merwin Liquor on Broadway near 94, around Bryant Avenue there, Lindale, the day after the riot, it was announced on social media that there was going to be basically a flea market there for the goods stolen from Target and other stores. It was announced, and that parking lot became a busy over. You couldn't get in. There was a waiting line to get through there, and it was the sale and use of drugs, the sale of the activity, criminal activity taking place there, and then, of course, the sale and use of the stolen items. And given the retreat from the third precinct. It was the day after the third precinct. Given the retreat from the third precinct and that kind of psychological twist that happened, well, it was a point of where defiance was successful. We came up against the place where the buck stopped, and the buck did not stop, and it was as if something broke, and the criminal community understood that if you had sufficient numbers and you could congregate, you could actually overwhelm the police, and they would retreat.
You're a long way. You're a long way from a 30-year career in the toy industry, aren't you?
A long. I can't. I don't even remember what I did.
Why did you end your city council tenure in 2014? Was it to have a mayor run for mayor?
Yeah, I ran the mayor, and interestingly, I ran on two platforms. One was main platforms. The first one was public safety, and because that was not a big issue then for people, it wasn't the romantic thing that got the attention. But I saw that unless we fixed that whole public safety issue, that our city was going to be in trouble. And I just was out of step with the times, I guess.
Do you fear for the future of the city?
Oh, absolutely. I do fear for the future because I've seen so many cities across the country that had riots in the 60s that never recovered in certain areas. And in fact, West Broadway and Plymouth Avenue, which were West Broadway was the number one commercial corridor outside of downtown. And Plymouth Avenue was not far behind because that was the Jewish commercial street. And so now Plymouth Avenue is a tame street with maybe two pieces of commercial property. And West Broadway has all these storefronts that are totally underutilized and underexploited by commerce, and a lot of nonprofits, and the street is a dangerous place in many ways.
You have chosen to remain in your neighborhood all these years.
Yeah, absolutely. I came here in 1970, and as an immigrant
from Jamaica.
From Jamaica.
Yep.
Every job I held after college, I was the first African American or first black person. And so I walked into doors that other people had opened before me. And I gathered over time a deep sense of gratitude and appreciation. And I made a commitment actually from college that I was always going to live in a minority, African American community, low income, because I felt that's where I could make the biggest difference and return the favor for all those who sacrificed before me. So it's a very deliberate action, and I paid the price. I haven't made money on real estate. I've sold houses for less than I bought them for because I've moved across the country to 6 states. But I think what is the money? I mean, I now have a kind of life that 50 years ago maybe 1% of African Americans had, and so this is the best place I can be to express that gratitude and to pass it along. And I'm just fortunate to have a wife who agreed to that lifestyle, and moving into North Minneapolis, into this Jordan neighborhood, together, We were able to do much more together than either of us could have done apart. And it changed our lives, and we were able to make a fairly significant contribution. So I feel good about it. We wouldn't live anywhere else.
Do you have children?
We've raised 3 girls here.
And how have they fared in life?
Well, they went off to college.
Mm-hmm.
One of our daughters is adopted, the eldest, and she left college and became a model, and a very successful model all over the world. But she's now trying to have the post-model life and enhance her education.
Mm-hmm.
And then our other 2 girls went off to college, and one is taking on alternative online type program. She's a graphic designer, and the other one is still at Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
But their lives would have been easier, definitely smoother. They would have had lifetime friends. They had no friends on our street. Our street is dominated by rentals, and renters move on average every 11 months.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have no lifetime friendships in the community. And, the dangers, they probably went to 30 vigils with us.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they paid a price for that.
Would you ever consider running for mayor again?
Well, I'm 74.
Okay.
So
what? Biden's about 98.
So I have to think about that. But but I did, I do feel that we have accumulated a lot of savvy around what our community works from the grassroots.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of discouraging to see that we have a city council who would consider, me and us, who are really at where the rubber meets the road, to be sort of old-fashioned and
mm-hmm.
no longer relevant to consult with or to hear from. And in fact, my council member told me that I shouldn't worry about it. In 15 years, I'm going to thank him.
Is that Jeremiah?
Yeah. In 15 years, I'm going to thank him for the decision he's making. In other words, I'm not going to listen to anything you have to say. We're going to make a decision here, and you'll thank me in the future. So,
well, they're making dreadful decisions. Dreadful.
Yeah, I do believe that.
Mm-hmm.
This thing is so difficult. You make decisions and you think out of good heart and intent. Next thing you know, all of these unintended consequences come behind to bite you,
mm-hmm.
because we are in a deep, deep system, dyed-in-the-wool system of inequity.
Mm-hmm.
And inequity isn't going to die off like that. It's an ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
And the ecosystem comes back at you when you try to change anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so to think that changing a one thing is going to change everything, it's a pipe dream. And so much of this dysfunction of our police department and our community are generational, dyed in the wool, very American, tied to ancient injustices and to patterns of our lives. So, for instance, you can build a school here in North Minneapolis, graduate 100% of your kids, and have the attitude that, this is a dangerous community. We're going to graduate you, and we're going to get you out of here.
Mm-hmm.
And so while you're helping these say, 100 children a year, you're also sending the message that this community is entirely unacceptable, undesirable, and it's a place to be escaped from.
Mm-hmm.
And so in helping the kids, you hurt the community.
Right.
Because they're gone, they're not coming back. And in fact, most of the solutions we've come up with have involved that element where people succeed and thrive and leave. And so while the people become gentrified, the community continues to be inadequate in so many ways.
I want to thank you. I want to thank you again for those lawsuits. I think you went as far as you could. I have a feeling. I know how you're going to vote on that ballot question.
Yeah. Well, we're for both ends.
Yeah.
You know, both
right.
police department with sufficient members to keep us safe, and a lot of the components that the other group or groups are advocating, like social workers and changing some policies. But if we don't do it carefully, we'll do more harm to achieve less good.
I can't thank you enough, sir. Let's stay in touch.
Thank you. I enjoyed spending the time with you.
All right. Thank you, Don Samuels, who,
take care.
Thank you, who, along with his wife and Bruce Dotchis, filed the lawsuits that kept hope alive for more clarity on the ballot question.